What's up guys, today we're going to be talking about the top 10 field spells in Yu-Gi-Oh, so let's get into it. At number 10 we have Mystic Mine. So Mystic Mine reads, if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, your opponent cannot activate monster effects or declare an attack. If you control more monsters than your opponent does, you cannot activate monster effects or declare an attack. Once per turn, during the end phase, if both players control the same number of monsters, destroy this card. So Mystic Mine is a really interesting one. It single-handedly wins the game a lot of the time against decks if you don't have back row removal. When it was initially released, people hated it, and even now to this day, it tends to be a card that people either really hate or they really love, and they play burn strategies around it. But it has single-handedly ensured that back row removal needs to be in your decks if you're going to competitive tournaments, because one Mystic Mine can be the end of your entire streak. You just won't have a way to even use your monster effects. It's a really good card, and when backed up by things like Demise of the Land, so that you can activate it on your opponent's turn as soon as they put a monster on the field, or with cards like Silent Wobby, so that you can give your opponent a monster if they don't even summon, it becomes incredible and oppressive in burn and stall decks, and even as a going second deck for some decks like Dinosaurs and Sky Striker. So Mystic Mine is a really good card, and it's obvious that it definitely needs to be on this list. At number 9, we have Domain of the True Monarchs. So, this card reads, while you have no cards in your extra deck, and you are the only player that controls a tribute summon monster, your opponent cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck. If a tribute summon monster you control attacks an opponent's monster, it gains 800 attack during damage calculation only. Once per turn, you can reduce the level of one monster with 2800 attack and 1000 defense in your hand by 2 until the end of this turn, even if they are summoned or set, and even if this card leaves the field. So Domain is a really notorious card, as back in the day it was one of the reasons why Monarchs was so strong. Being able to lock your opponent out of the extra deck is an incredible effect, and on top of that, having 800 attack be granted to your monsters during the damage step makes it even harder for your opponents to out those monsters, especially since they can't access the extra deck anyway. Then its reduction in level was also useful, allowing you to tribute summon your Monarchs with just one material, or even normal summon them if you had 2 Domains in the hand, as Domain isn't a once per turn effect. This card is super good, and even now it occasionally sees some plays in true Draco strategies, as this card doesn't actually force you to play Monarchs, it just needs you to play monsters that have 2800 attack and 1000 defense, or to play tribute summon monsters, something which true Draco does all the time. Definitely an amazing card, and while it's not as strong anymore, it always will be on the top 10 lists as one of the best field spells in Yu-Gi-Oh. At number 8, we have Orcustrated BABEL. So this card's text reads, you can activate the effects of Orcus monsters in your graveyard or link monsters you control with Orcus in their original names as quick effects. During your main phase, if this card is in your graveyard, except the turn it was sent to the graveyard, you can send one card from your hand to the graveyard and add this to your hand. So this is a deceptively simple field spell, but single-handedly made Orcus one of the top tier decks for quite a while. Orcus monsters already have pretty good effects, from Dengirsu sending any card on the field to the graveyard without targeting, to Harp Horror special summoning any Orcus monster from the deck to your field. Being able to do this as a quick effect gave Orcus so much versatility and grinding power, as they could use these incredible effects on their turn, link off and create incredible monsters like IP Masquerena and Topologic Zeraboros, and then reuse the effects on their opponent's turn, meaning it was so hard for your opponent to deal with this continuous advantage and the amount of disruption that you could put on the board. Orcus is a really strong deck, and Orcustrated BABEL was definitely a huge culprit behind that. On top of that, it has a really good recycling effect to Orcus, where it can put itself back in your hand by sending a card from the hand to the graveyard. Now, all of your Orcus monsters have great effects when banished from the graveyard, so that's where you want them to be most of the time. So this cost isn't even really a cost. To be honest, it just sets you up for next turn to carry on looping your Orcus monsters and gain more advantage and eventually win the game. Orcustrated BABEL, an awesome card. At number 7, we have DRYTRON FAFNIR. This card reads, when this card is activated, you can add one DRYTRON spell or trap from your deck to your hand, except DRYTRON FAFNIR. The activation and activated effects of ritual spell cards cannot be negated. Once per turn, if a monster is normal or special summoned face up while you control a DRYTRON monster, except during the damage step, you can reduce that monster's level by 1 per 1000 of its current attack for the rest of this turn. You can only activate one DRYTRON FAFNIR per turn. Now this card is really awesome, basically just being Magical Meltdown but for ritual monsters. Searching any DRYTRON monster is great, but not only being able to do that, but to allow your ritual spells to go off without being interrupted is even better. DRYTRON having this alongside other really powerful cards in the archetype allowed it to dominate the meta as soon as it came out, until unfortunately Cyber Angel Benton went to 1. But this is still a really good card, a mandatory 3-off in any DRYTRON deck, and to be honest, probably a mandatory 3-off in most ritual decks as well. The last effect of level modulation isn't hugely relevant, as all it really does is mess up your opponent's XYZ or synchro summons. However, when you've got 2 great effects on a card, who cares if it's got a 3rd crappy effect? You don't have to use it. At number 6, we have KOZMOTOWN. KOZMOTOWN's effect reads: once per turn, you can target one of your banished Cosmo monsters, return it to the hand, and if you do, lose LP equal to its original level times 100. Once per turn, you can reveal any number of Cosmo monsters in your hand and shuffle them into the deck, then draw cards equal to the number of cards you shuffled into the deck. If this card in the field zone is destroyed by a card effect, you can add 1 Cosmo card from your deck to your hand. KOZMOTOWN was one of the best field spells of its time, having 3 incredible effects, and not only that, none of them were hard once per turns, meaning multiple KOZMOTOWNs just meant multiple pluses. Being able to return any banished Cosmo monster to the hand is great, because it means that you never really lose those cards and it gives you a great grind game. But then on top of that, being able to mulligan your hand with those Cosmo monsters so you can put the big ships in the deck, draw more cards, and then just special summon the big ships out with your little Cosmo pilot effects is a really good loop to have. Lastly, this card has a great searching effect, where when it's destroyed it searches any Cosmo card from the deck to the hand. Pairing this with your Slip Rider, you have a great way to search any Cosmo card from your deck to your hand, as long as you have a pilot and a Cosmo in your hand already. This card was amazing for its time, and definitely was a staple 3-of in Cosmo decks, because it did everything they ever needed. At number 5, we have the Hidden City. This card's effect reads: when this card is activated, you can add 1 Subterra monster from your deck to your hand. Once per turn, you can change 1 face down defense position Subterra monster to face up attack or defense position. Once per turn, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can change 1 face down defense position Subterra monster you control to face up attack or defense position, then you can negate the attack. You can only activate 1 The Hidden City per turn. This card isn't as directly powerful as some other cards on this list, however in its archetype it is incredible and really raises the ceiling of that deck, turning your flip monsters, which would normally have to wait a turn to get their effects, into basically instant searches or instant negators depending on which one you're using. On top of that, it also is really good at protecting those monsters, negating your opponent's cards when they try and attack into them, and then flipping them down, meaning that later on they can be flipped back up for their effects again, meaning that you can proc their effects on your turn and your opponent's turn. Pairing this with a card like Subterra Guru, you can get continuous searches over and over again while having a wall that is almost impossible for your opponent to get through. Hidden City is a really good card, and it really boosts the strength of Subterras, allowing them to compete with other meta decks. At number 4, we have TRICKSTAR Light Stage. This card's effect reads: when this card is activated, you can add 1 TRICKSTAR monster from your deck to your hand. Once per turn, you can target 1 set card in your opponent's spell or trap zone. While this card is in the field zone, that set card cannot be activated until the end phase, and your opponent must activate it during the end phase or else send it to the graveyard. Each time a TRICKSTAR monster you control inflicts battle or effect damage to your opponent, inflict 200 damage to them. During its time, Light Stage was one of the best field spells ever released. Field spells that just search a card in the deck are always going to be great and warrant playing 3 of them, but on top of that, this card effectively is a Night Beam, stunning your opponent's back row or forcing them to activate it at inopportune moments. Being able to search your great normal summon in Candina and then stun your opponent's back row so they probably can't solemn it makes this deck super consistent and super effective at getting to its game plan, and it's no wonder that this card is limited at the moment. Lastly, the burn effect is really good for TRICKSTAR. Most of your TRICKSTAR cards have some sort of burn effect or synergy of burn effects, and so adding an extra 200 burn to every time you inflict effect damage to your opponent is always going to be super effective at whittling them down and making it hard for them to respond to you in the long run. Right guys, so we're at the top 3, so what you need to do is go down into the comment section, write down what you think the top 3 field spells are in Yu-Gi-Oh, okay? After you've done that, make sure to like and subscribe to this video if you've made it this far. So, are you ready? Okay, let's get into it. At number 3, we have Magical Meltdown. So this card's effect reads, when this card is activated, you can add one Alistair the Invoker from your deck to your hand. The activation of your cards and effects that include an effect that fusion summons a fusion monster cannot be negated. Also, your opponent's cards and effects cannot activate when a monster is fusion summoned this way. You can only activate one Magical Meltdown per turn. So Meltdown is infamous for being an insane card, and if FAFNIR was on the list, you know Meltdown has to be on the list. Firstly, it searches Alistair the Invoker, which is amazing, and then Alistair the Invoker is also going to search Invocation. So this card by itself is a 1-card Macabre or 1-card Purgatrio, making it great. On top of that, it stuns your opponent when they try and activate an effect after you fusion summoned, and it also prevents them from negating said fusion summon. These two effects together are super strong, as it basically means there's nothing your opponent can do once that invocation hits the field. This card really has it all. Consistency, protection for your plays, I mean, what else do you really need? Surprisingly, it hasn't been hit on the ban list yet, but its days may be numbered, as it's seen so much competitive play at this stage that I would be shocked if Konami doesn't hit it soon. Okay guys, so number 2, we have Dragonic Diagram. So this card's effect reads, all true Draco and true King monsters on the field gain 300 attack and defense. The first time each tribute summoned true Draco or true King monster would be destroyed by battle each turn, it is not destroyed. Once per turn, you can destroy one other card you control or in your hand, and if you do, add one true Draco or one true King card from your deck to your hand. Diagram is an insane card, so let's talk about in its own archetype first. In True Dracos, this card offers huge amounts of consistency, allowing you to proc the effects of your amazing spells and traps by destroying them off the field, and then also allowing you to add a card to your hand from your deck. But then what's even better is it provides huge amounts of protection for your True Dracos on the field, preventing them from being destroyed by battle each turn at least once, and then it gives them 300 attack on defense. And even better, none of these effects are hard once per turn, so multiple diagrams just means multiple searches. For a really long time, this card was a 3-of in every single True Draco deck. However, unfortunately, it was hit on the ban list and is at 1 at the moment, making the deck a shell of its former self. But not only that, this card is insane in other decks. Having the ability to destroy your own cards is super useful in Yu-Gi-Oh, as a lot of cards get effects off being destroyed. Not only that, but this allows you to destroy cards straight out of your hand, which is quite unique in Yu-Gi-Oh, as most cards focus on destroying things on the field. This means you're often going to get a +1 or a +2, a card out of your hand, and you're going to get a huge swing in tempo that game. We've seen diagrams splashed into so many decks, but probably one of the biggest culprits is dinosaurs. True King Dinos was an incredible deck, as Baby Cerosaurus and Petite Pteranodon are amazing monsters that both search or summon a dinosaur from the deck when they are destroyed. From there, Lithosogym could be searched, as most dino monsters are Earth, and then you can get further effects by destroying more cards in your hand with Lithosogym. I mean, really, what else do you want? Diagram is an insane card, it's not surprising that it's limited, and definitely is deserving of the number 2 spot. Alright guys, so number 1, the best field spell in Yu-Gi-Oh! Look, it has to be Spiral Resort. So Spiral Resort's card text reads, your opponent cannot target other Spiral cards you control with card effects. Once per turn, you can add one Spiral monster from your deck to your hand. Once per turn during your end phase, shuffle one monster from your graveyard into the deck or destroy this card. Spiral Resort is incredible. Every single effect is top tier, and it's no wonder that this card is still limited in both formats. So the first effect of preventing your opponent from targeting your Spiral cards is great. Untargetability means that a huge amount of interruption that your opponent might potentially have simply won't be able to go off. But on top of this, it searches any Spiral monster in your deck, and it's not hard once per turn. We love those consistency boosters, don't we? But lastly, its cost isn't even really a cost. You just have to shuffle a monster from your graveyard into your deck to keep this on the field, which means it also recurs resources. I mean, this card single-handedly does everything Spiral needs. And not only that, but Spiral themselves are a great deck at spamming materials out on the board and creating incredible combo loops to really shut your opponent down and lock them out of the game. Spiral Resort facilitates this hugely and definitely is the best field spell we've ever seen in Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't even know why it's in the game, to be honest, and it's not surprising it's limited at the moment. So guys, those are my top 10 field spells, but I'm just going to quickly mention some of the runner-ups, and I'd say there are 3 cards that I really wanted to put on this list but unfortunately didn't make. So those 3 cards are firstly Phantasm Spiral, BEF Zelos, and Dragon Ravine. And it really comes down to the fact that Phantasm Spiral and BEF Zelos are amazing field spells and probably stronger than every other field spell on this list. However, they enable bad strategies. BEFs just aren't that good, and even though BEF Zelos lets you play the game, I mean, you're still not going to be doing anything. And similarly with Phantasm Spiral, while it's a really good field spell, unfortunately you can only play with normal monsters, which really hampers it. Dragon Ravine is also a really good field spell, but it's basically Foolish Burial, so I didn't really think that it deserved to be on the list just for being a Foolish Burial with a discard. However, its second effect is quite good for Dragonies. Anyway guys, thank you for getting to this point. Make sure you like, comment and subscribe this video, and stay tuned. I'm definitely going to have more top 10s coming out soon. Peace.